The stars of the Valari Empire glowed like scattered jewels across the endless night. Every world under their control shone with order, intelligence, and progress. The Valari were proud of their logic. They built machines that could think faster than any mind, fleets that could cross galaxies, and cities that touched the sky. For thousands of years, they believed themselves unmatched. But deep in the oldest libraries of the Empire, hidden behind layers of forgotten data, there existed a story that few dared to speak of anymore. A story about humans. According to the ancient records, humans were a race from a distant blue world called Earth. They were said to have lived long before the Valari rose to power. They were described as fearless, emotional, unpredictable, and impossibly stubborn. Some claimed that humans once fought against forces far stronger than themselves and won. Others believed they were myths, tales created to teach courage to young Valari. Most scholars laughed at the idea. No one had ever seen a human, no trace of their kind remained, and no star map contained the name Earth. To the modern Valari, the word human was no more real than magic or monsters. Commander Lyra Tiven was one of those who never believed in myths. She was a young but skilled officer in the Valari Navy. Known for her calm mind and strict discipline, her fleet patrolled the edges of the Empire where old systems slept, forgotten by time. Lyra's world was built on data, order, and reason. She trusted scanners, not stories. Her ship, the VSS Horizon, glided silently through the Black Sea of space. Her crew worked with mechanical precision, their silver eyes reflecting the glow of holographic screens. "Commander," said Lieutenant Kalar, her second officer, his voice soft and even, "we have reached the coordinates of the uncharted system." Lyra nodded, folding her hands behind her back. "Begin a full scan. Let's see what this system hides." The screens flickered with streams of data. One of the planets was small and blue-green, half covered in clouds. It looked ordinary, lifeless but strangely beautiful. "Atmosphere within breathable range," Kellar reported. "Oxygen levels high. Radiation minimal. No active signals detected." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Breathable atmosphere on a dead world? Unlikely. Mark it for observation." As the Horizon orbited the planet, Lyra watched its surface. Vast oceans, mountains, forests, and silent cities buried under time. Something about it stirred a faint curiosity in her, a feeling she couldn't explain. "Any record of this world in the archives?" she asked. Her AI assistant, a soft voice named Vera, answered. "Negative, Commander. No data match found in Imperial history. However, surface patterns suggest artificial structures, ancient, possibly abandoned." Lyra turned to the main screen. "Ancient structures?" "Yes, Commander," Vera replied. "And there is one more thing. The system's data signature contains traces of language patterns similar to pre-Empire myth archives." Lyra frowned. "What myths?" "The myths of humans, Commander." The bridge went silent. Officers exchanged uneasy glances. Even in an empire of reason, the word human carried a strange echo. Lyra broke the silence. "Prepare a landing team. We will confirm this ourselves." The descent into the planet's atmosphere was smooth but tense. The landing craft cut through clouds and storms, finally touching down in what once had been a city. Gigantic towers leaned against each other like broken bones. Roads were cracked and swallowed by green vines. The air smelled fresh, but the silence was heavy. "Scanners on," Lyra ordered, stepping out onto the soil. Her boots sank slightly into the earth. "Let's map the area." As her team spread out, small drones floated into the air, scanning every direction. The data returned slowly. The ruins were full of strange symbols, simple yet powerful. Kalar examined one of the fallen walls. "Commander, these markings. I've seen similar ones in mythological records. Look here, this symbol appears often. It was a flag. Faded, but still visible. Red, white, and blue stripes with a field of stars. Beneath it were carved words, worn but readable. 'Freedom is worth the fight.'" Lyra touched the stone gently. "Freedom? What kind of civilization carves such emotion into their walls?" She turned to her translator device. "Vera, translate the rest." "Translation complete," Vera said softly. "Records suggest these were motivational inscriptions common among human settlements." "Human settlements," Lyra repeated slowly, shaking her head. "That's impossible." Yet as they explored deeper, the impossible began to take shape. Buildings of glass and metal, machines of strange design, frozen vehicles. Everything spoke of intelligence and creativity. And yet there was no sign of life. This world feels asleep, Kalar whispered. Lyra nodded. Or waiting. Hours passed. The team reached what appeared to be an underground structure sealed behind thick alloy doors. The metal was ancient but still strong. Energy readings from inside, Vera reported. Minimal but steady. Could be an automated system still running. Lyra studied the door. Open it carefully. The engineers worked fast, using plasma tools to cut through layers of dust and corrosion. With a deep hiss, the door slid open, revealing a dark corridor lined with lights that flickered weakly to life as they entered. Inside, the walls bore old symbols and strange text. Everything was quiet except for the low hum of a power source still functioning after centuries. Whatever built this, Kellar said softly, they built it to last. At the corridor's end stood a chamber filled with pods, dozens of them transparent and covered in frost. Inside some, skeletal remains rested peacefully. In others, the system still blinked faintly. Lyra felt her breath catch. Cryo-sleep chambers? Affirmative, Vera confirmed. Ancient design. Some units retain low power. Her eyes moved to the nearest pod. Through the foggy glass, she saw a shape. Tall, broad-shouldered, unmistakably humanoid. Is it alive? Unknown. Biosigns are weak but present. Lyra's heart pounded. Can you translate any of the text on the control panel? Vera's processor's word. Translating. It says United Terran Defense Cryo Unit 47, do not disturb until threat level red. Terran, Kellar repeated. Like Terra, Earth? Lyra stared at the sleeping figure. The myth spoke of humans from Earth. Could this be one of them? No, that couldn't be real. Logic said it was a coincidence, but then the pod hissed. Lights turned from blue to green. Commander. Vera's voice rose. System activation detected. Power surge within the chamber. Step back, Lyra ordered. The glass cover of the pod lifted slowly, releasing a faint mist. The figure inside took a deep breath, the sound echoing in the silence. His chest rose and fell, alive. His hair was dark, his face marked by lines of time. His eyes opened, sharp, focused, human. The team froze. No one spoke. The man looked around, confusion in his gaze, then locked eyes with Lyra. He didn't move aggressively. He simply stood, steadying himself against the pod. His voice was rough, low, but clear. Who woke me up? He asked. And where's my planet? Lyra's mind went blank. This couldn't be real. Myths didn't wake up and speak. Myths didn't breathe. But the man before her was breathing. The silence stretched for long seconds until Lyra finally spoke. You are on a planet once called Earth. The man's expression shifted. First disbelief, then sorrow. Earth, still here, he murmured. How long have I been asleep? Vera's analysis flashed across Lyra's visor. Estimated time over 900 years. He closed his eyes briefly. 900 years? Lyra took a careful step forward. Who are you? He looked at her, calm, steady, like a soldier facing a mission. Captain Adrian Cross, United Terran Defense Force, last recorded duty, hold the line. The chamber was utterly silent except for the hum of machinery. Lyra's thoughts spun. The myths were true. Humanity had existed, and one of them now stood before her. For the first time in her life, Commander Lyra Tiven didn't know what to believe. The underground chamber was filled with the soft hum of old machinery. Captain Adrian Cross stood, stretching his stiff limbs after centuries in cryosleep. His eyes scanned the room carefully. Every movement was precise, measured, like a soldier trained to notice the smallest detail. Commander Lyra Tiven watched him closely, her mind racing. Logic told her humans were myths, stories meant to teach courage. But here was one, alive, breathing, standing in front of her. Adrian Cross, Lyra said slowly, testing the sound of the name. I'm Commander Lyra Tiven. You've been asleep for centuries. Your planet, Earth, is gone. The galaxy has changed. Adrian's brow furrowed. Gone? His voice was low, steady, yet carried a weight of disbelief. What do you mean, gone? Where are my people? Lyra hesitated. I don't know if any survived. The records say your species vanished after a great war. Adrian's expression remained calm, but his eyes hardened. A war against whom? The records are unclear, Lyra admitted. Some kind of invader. Your people fought, but they were defeated. Most of your civilization disappeared. Only myths remained. Adrian's jaw tightened. Defeated, maybe. But that doesn't mean we were weak. Humans survive. Humans endure. His voice carried a quiet power that made Lyra shiver. She realized then that the myths hadn't lied. Humans might have been gone, but their spirit remained alive right here in this man. Do you know what time it is? Lyra asked. Adrian shook his head. Time is measured differently now, but I can figure it out. He took a careful step forward, inspecting the cryopods and the symbols around the room. All these pods. Were there others like me? Yes, Lyra said. Some were empty, some destroyed over time. You are the only one fully alive. Adrian's eyes softened for a moment. Then I'm the last of my unit. The last soldier of humanity's defense. The weight of the statement hung in the air. Lyra could see the history in his stance, the pride, the grief. Humans, she thought, were not just strong in body. They carried the weight of centuries, the memory of their world, and the courage to face the impossible. The landing team had cleared the entrance, but the world outside remained silent. The city ruins stretched as far as the eye could see. Half-buried towers, cracked roads, overgrown parks. Nature had reclaimed the structures, yet hints of human ingenuity peeked through. Vehicles with strange designs sat frozen in time. Old lights flickered as if the planet remembered its past. Adrian stepped outside cautiously. The air smelled of earth and rain, a scent foreign yet familiar to him. His boots sank slightly into the soil, leaving clear prints. He paused and closed his eyes. This was my home, he whispered. It looks peaceful, but it's empty. Lyra watched him silently. His presence was strange, like a ghost walking through a memory. But she also felt something else, a spark, a life force that refused to fade. Adrian, she said carefully, your knowledge, your experience, it could help us. Our galaxy faces threats every day. Your skills could be invaluable. Adrian opened his eyes, looking at her. I don't know this galaxy, but I know how to fight, and I know how to survive. If you need that, then I will help. But first, I need to understand what happened here. They began exploring together, moving through the ruined streets. Adrian's eyes studied every structure, every symbol, every trace of human life. He noticed details others would miss. A broken console that once held energy, a door that could still lock mechanically, a series of markings etched into the walls. This world was built to last, Adrian said almost to himself. Humans wanted to endure, and they did in a way, but we were outnumbered, outmatched. Not in strength, but in time and resources. Lyra followed him silently. She had studied warfare for decades, analyzed battles across star systems, yet Adrian's perspective was different. He spoke not of machines, not of numbers, but of spirit, strategy, and courage. This is what myths never taught us, she thought. Humans fought not because they had the best weapons, but because they refused to give up. The first signs of danger came as a faint signal on the scanners. Lyra frowned, adjusting her visor. Commander, Vera said, a fleet has entered orbit. Unknown vessels unregistered. Weapons active. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Hostiles, in orbit. They're scanning the planet. Possibly scavengers. Possibly military. Kalar looked worried. Commander, we are outnumbered. Do we engage or retreat? Lyra's mind raced. The horizon had superior technology, yet the unknown fleet's numbers were significant. She glanced at Adrian. Your people fought impossible odds before. Do you think we can defend ourselves? Adrian's voice was calm, steady. If we have coordination, courage, and the will to survive, yes. Even against impossible odds, humans find a way. Lyra stared at him, a mix of doubt and awe. You really believe that? I've seen it, he replied simply, and I'm about to show you. The battle began as the first hostile ships descended from orbit, plasma beams cutting through the sky. Valari soldiers prepared for a tactical retreat, but Adrian moved quickly. He organized the team in ways Lyra had never considered. Small units flanking, diversions using the terrain, improvising with ruined equipment. It's not about firepower alone, he shouted. It's about thinking ahead, using every advantage, and never underestimating your enemy. Lyra watched as the team executed his instructions. Machines fired from abandoned towers, creating traps for the invaders. Explosions lit the ruined city, yet the team moved with fluid coordination. Adrian's leadership didn't come from technology. It came from instinct, experience, and courage. The first wave of enemy ships faltered. Lyra realized something she couldn't have predicted. Adrian's knowledge of tactics, human ingenuity, and morale transformed fear into action. This is unbelievable, she muttered. Adrian looked at her, his eyes calm. Humans survive because we adapt. We fight because we must, and we never forget why we fight. By the time the hostile fleet retreated, the city was scarred, but the Horizons team stood victorious. Adrian's leadership had turned a desperate situation into triumph. Lyra walked beside him as the dust settled. I thought humans were myths. Stories to inspire hope, but you've just proven they were real. Adrian smiled faintly, looking at the ruined city. Myths are born from truth, Commander. The galaxy forgets, but truth remains. Humanity never truly disappears. Night fell on the planet. Stars shone above the ruins, reflecting the silence of a lost world. Lyra and Adrian stood on a hill overlooking the city. She could feel the weight of history pressing down. The centuries humans had lived, fought, and survived, now condensed into this one man. You must teach us, she said quietly. Teach us how to fight, how to survive, how to be more than just machines following orders. Adrian turned to her, eyes reflecting the starlight. I will, but first, we must understand this place. We must know what we defend before we teach others to fight for it. Lyra nodded. For the first time in her life, she felt that the galaxy held more than logic and order. It held courage, determination, and the unpredictable spark of life that humans carried. This is only the beginning, Adrian said softly. The galaxy is bigger than we know, and threats will come. But if humans are remembered, if humans return, there is hope. Lyra glanced at the ruined city, the sleeping pods and the stars beyond. She realized the truth. Myths were not lies. And if this human warrior could survive the impossible, perhaps the myths could become reality once more. The night was quiet, but a spark had been ignited. Somewhere deep inside the ruins, the human spirit was awake again, and Commander Lyra Tiven knew that the story of humanity was about to unfold, right before her eyes. The morning light filtered through the broken towers of the ruined city, casting long shadows over streets swallowed by vines. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of earth and old rain. Commander Lyra Tiven walked beside Captain Adrian Cross, observing him closely. Every step he took, every glance he gave seemed purposeful, as though centuries of training were guiding his movements even in this quiet, empty world. Adrian, Lyra began cautiously, we need to understand your skills, your knowledge. The galaxy has dangers, and if you survived before, you may hold the key to protecting others. Adrian's gaze scanned the ruins. Survival isn't about weapons or machines alone, he said. It's about strategy, adaptation, and morale. Those are the things humans mastered, not just for themselves, but for the people they cared about. Lyra nodded slowly. Then teach us. Show us how humans think. He looked at her seriously. I will. But first we need supplies. Old structures may contain tools, energy cells, anything left from before. They moved through the city, exploring abandoned shops, warehouses, and factories. Adrian's eyes were sharp, picking up on details others missed. A hidden energy conduit, a structural weakness in a wall, a crate that could serve as cover in battle. Lyra realized that what made him human was not just strength or courage, but the ability to see opportunity where others saw ruin. Humans are survivors, Adrian said quietly, noticing her observation. We make use of what's available. Every piece of the world has a purpose if you know how to see it. While they scavenged, Vera, the AI, projected reports from orbit. Commander, she said, the unknown fleet has returned. They are scanning the planet for life forms and energy signatures. Lyra frowned. Hostiles again? How did they find us so fast? Adrian's expression was calm but determined. They are opportunists. They sense weakness. If they think this planet is abandoned, they will strike. But we can turn that weakness into advantage. Advantage? Lyra repeated, skeptical. How? We have only our small team and limited resources. Adrian smiled faintly. Then we use what we have in ways they won't expect. Humans are clever. We fight smarter, not just harder. The day passed as they set traps and fortified positions in the city. Adrian taught the Valari soldiers how to think creatively. Instead of relying solely on technology, they learned to use their environment, the uneven streets, ruined towers, and even abandoned vehicles, to their benefit. Place energy emitters here, Adrian instructed, pointing to a fallen streetlight. When they fire, they will overload the sensors. Then flank them through this alley. The humans call it an ambush. Lyra watched as her soldiers followed his instructions. Their movements were hesitant at first, but soon they gained confidence. The Valari, trained for precise calculations and neural control, struggled with improvisation. Adrian guided them patiently, showing them that instinct and courage could be just as powerful as programming. Kellar, observing quietly, whispered to Lyra, "Commander, he's changing how our soldiers think. They are beginning to act on instinct, not just orders." "Yes," Lyra said softly, "and I think that is exactly what humans were meant to do, not just obey, but lead themselves." By nightfall, the first hostile ships appeared in orbit again. Unlike the previous wave, this fleet was larger and more organized. Lyra felt tension rise among her crew. The ships hovered silently, scanning the planet below. Adrian stood on a high vantage point looking at the enemy formation. "Remember," he said, voice steady, "the enemy expects fear. They expect hesitation. If we act with confidence, if we act together, we can turn their strength against them." "Confidence. Together," Lyra repeated. She could feel the truth in his words. The Valari, logical and disciplined, had never fought this way before, but she trusted Adrian. Somehow, she knew he could guide them to victory. The battle began as enemy ships fired plasma beams toward the city. Adrian's plan was simple yet brilliant. He divided the Valari into small agile units, each with a clear task. Some distracted the ships with mobile energy emitters. Others moved silently through alleys to ambush the attackers when they landed. "Focus on the high ground," Adrian instructed. "Control the towers, use the environment, never stop moving." The Valari soldiers executed the plan with growing confidence. They used ruined buildings for cover, creating traps that sent hostile drones crashing into walls. Adrian moved with them, a calm presence in the chaos, guiding and correcting without panic. Lyra followed closely, observing every detail. She realized the truth of the myths. Humans didn't just fight, they inspired courage. Where fear might have paralyzed the Valari, Adrian's presence turned it into action. Hours into the battle, the enemy fleet began to falter. Their formations broke under the unexpected tactics. The energy emitters confused their targeting systems, and ambushes from hidden positions forced retreats. Adrian's knowledge of strategy, combined with the Valari's precision, turned a desperate defense into a controlled counterattack. Kellar, amazed, whispered, "Commander, he's a one-man army, but it's not just strength, it's leadership, creativity." "Yes," Lyra said, watching Adrian coordinate the final moves. "Humans fight with more than their bodies. They fight with their minds, their courage, and their hearts." By the end of the battle, the hostile fleet retreated, leaving the city battered but intact. Smoke rose from the ruins, but the Valari soldiers were alive, energized, and inspired. Adrian stood on a ruined tower, looking at the horizon. His voice was calm, carrying over the city. "You see, victory doesn't always come from numbers or machines. It comes from thinking, adapting, and never giving up." Lyra approached him, awe in her eyes. I thought humans were myths, stories to inspire hope. But you've just proven they were real." Adrian's eyes softened. "Myths are born from truth, Commander. The galaxy forgets, but truth remains. Humanity never truly disappears." As night fell, the survivors gathered around fires they had made from broken structures. Adrian shared stories of Earth, the battles humans had fought, and the values they lived by. The Valari listened in silence, captivated. They fought not just for themselves, he said, but for their families, their friends, their homes. They believed in freedom, in standing up against impossible odds. That is why humans survived so long. That is why you still see their influence in the myths. Lyra realized something profound. Humans were not gods, nor monsters. They were mirrors of potential, showing what courage and determination could achieve. She looked at Adrian. You're more than a warrior. You're a teacher, a guide. The galaxy needs that. I need that. Adrian smiled faintly. Then we begin tomorrow. We learn from the past, prepare for the future, and stand ready for what comes. Humanity didn't survive to vanish quietly. We survived to remind the galaxy what it means to fight for what matters. The night was quiet, but a spark had been lit. Somewhere deep within the ruins of Earth, the human spirit was awake again. And Commander Lyra Tiven knew that the story of humanity was only beginning. This soldier, this myth made real, would show them what it truly meant to survive, adapt, and inspire courage in the galaxy. The morning sun rose over the ruined city of Sol 3, painting the broken towers and overgrown streets in gold and crimson. Commander Lyra Tiven walked alongside Captain Adrian Cross, her mind racing with the events of the past days. The fleet in orbit had retreated, but the threat was far from over. Adrian's presence had awakened something in the Valari soldiers, an instinct, a courage they had never experienced. Today, we prepare for more than survival, Adrian said, his voice calm but commanding. We prepare to fight with our minds, not just our weapons. Humans never relied solely on strength. We relied on creativity, adaptability, and courage. Lyra nodded. Then teach us, Adrian. Teach us everything you know. Adrian smiled faintly. Very well. But first you must understand this world. Earth, Sol 3, it shaped us. And understanding it will shape you. They began their day by exploring the ruins further. The city stretched endlessly, a labyrinth of broken buildings, fallen bridges, and empty streets. Adrian moved with confidence, pointing out structures that could serve as defensive positions or strategic observation points. Humans always looked for advantage, he explained. Even in ruins, there is opportunity. Every wall, every building, every piece of terrain can be used if you think creatively. The Valari soldiers followed him, learning not just to observe, but to analyze, adapt, and make decisions on instinct. Lyra noticed how quickly they began to change, their movements becoming fluid, coordinated, and confident. This is incredible, Kalar whispered. They're not just following orders, they're thinking, planning, improvising. Adrian overheard him. Exactly, he said. That is what made humans survive. Not obedience, but initiative. Not fear, but determination. That is what I teach. As the day progressed, Adrian introduced the Valari to human tactics. They practiced flanking maneuvers, ambush strategies, and using the environment to their advantage. Look here, Adrian said, pointing to a collapsed building. This alley can be a trap. Position your units here. When the enemy enters, they will be forced to split. You control the flow, not them. Lyra watched as the soldiers executed his plan. At first there was hesitation, but soon they moved with confidence, trusting their instincts as much as their orders. It was as if a spark had been lit within them, an understanding that courage, creativity, and cooperation could achieve more than raw power alone. Vera, the AI, recorded their movements silently. Analysis complete, Commander, she said. Human-led strategy has increased unit efficiency by 37%. Their actions are unpredictable, adaptive, and effective. Lyra smiled. Then the myths were right. Humans weren't just warriors, they were teachers. And Adrian is showing us the way. While the training continued, Adrian and Lyra explored deeper into the ruins, searching for resources and secrets of Earth. They discovered an underground facility, partially collapsed but intact. Inside, walls were lined with data panels, storage units, and dormant machines. These systems were designed to last, Adrian said, running his hands over the old technology. Even now, some are functional. Humanity thought long-term, prepared for anything, and built to survive. Lyra examined a panel. Could any of this technology help us? The fleet in orbit. They could return at any time. Adrian nodded. Yes, we can use what remains wisely. But remember, technology alone is not enough. Strategy, courage, and teamwork are stronger than any machine. They began reactivating some of the systems. Lights flickered on, screens displayed maps of the city, and automated drones powered up. Adrian instructed the Valari soldiers on how to use these tools in conjunction with their new tactics, blending old human ingenuity with Valari precision. The past can guide the present, Adrian explained. Humans fought not just for survival, but for freedom, for hope. That is what gives strength more than weapons or shields ever could. Days passed. The Valari soldiers transformed under Adrian's guidance. They were no longer just a fleet following orders. They were a team, thinking, adapting, and moving as one. Even Lyra felt the change within herself, a new respect for the human spirit that she had once dismissed as myth. But the calm did not last. Vera's sensors detected unusual activity in orbit. The unknown fleet had returned, larger and more organized than before. They scanned the planet methodically, looking for life and energy signatures. Lyra felt a familiar tension rise. "They're coming back," she said. Adrian's eyes narrowed, but his voice remained steady. "Then we are ready. Fear is what they want. Confidence is what we give them. We fight smart, we fight together, and we show them what humans and Valari inspired by humans can do." The fleet in orbit began its descent. Plasma beams cut through the sky and sensors detected multiple boarding parties. Lyra's heart pounded, but she trusted Adrian. He moved among the soldiers, giving precise instructions, coordinating defenses and maintaining calm amidst chaos. "Remember your training," Adrian shouted. "Use the environment. Move with purpose. Adapt and survive. Human tactics combined with Valari precision. Nothing can stop us if we act as one." The battle raged across the ruins. Valari drones and human-inspired units moved in coordination, striking from unexpected angles. Energy emitters disrupted enemy targeting systems. Traps and ambushes turned the tide against a numerically superior force. Lyra watched in awe. The myths had spoken of humans as warriors, but she realized now that the true strength of humans was not just in fighting. They inspired courage, creativity, and hope. That was a weapon no machine could replicate. Adrian moved through the battlefield with calm authority, correcting mistakes, encouraging soldiers, and striking decisively when needed. He was not just a soldier, he was a leader, a guide, and a symbol of everything humans represented. By the end of the battle, the hostile fleet retreated once more. The city was scarred, but the soldiers were alive, stronger, and more confident than ever. The spark of humanity had ignited within them. As night fell, Adrian and Lyra stood on a high tower overlooking the city. Fires burned in scattered areas, but the soldiers were alive and ready. "You've changed them," Lyra said quietly, "not just with tactics, but with courage. I can see it in their eyes." "The myths were not lies," Adrian nodded. "Humans endure. Humans inspire. And humans never forget why they fight. That is what the galaxy needs to remember." Lyra looked at the stars above, thinking of the fleet still out there. "Do you think they'll return?" "They will," Adrian said. "But we will be ready. Because now we fight not just with weapons or machines, but with spirit, determination, and unity. That is what makes us strong. That is what makes humans unforgettable." For the first time in centuries, Earth, Sol 3, felt alive again. Its history, its warriors, and its spirit had returned in the form of a single human soldier and the Valari he had inspired. And Commander Lyra Taven knew that the story of humanity was no longer just myth. It was alive, growing, and ready to face the galaxy's challenges. The spark of humanity had been lit, and nothing could extinguish it. The first light of Sol 3's morning stretched across the ruined city, illuminating broken towers and cracked streets. Commander Lyra Taven stood atop a high platform, overlooking her team. The Valari soldiers moved with confidence now, guided by a human warrior whose presence had awakened something long dormant, the spark of courage, creativity, and unity. In orbit, the unknown fleet had returned. Their ships darkened the skies like a shadow, scanning the planet, preparing to strike. Unlike before, their numbers were overwhelming. Yet Lyra's eyes were calm. She knew that the battle ahead would not rely solely on weapons. It would rely on strategy, ingenuity, and the human spirit. Adrian Cross stood beside her, scanning the horizon. "This is it," he said softly. "They think they can overwhelm us with numbers. They think fear will break us. They are wrong," Lyra nodded. "Then we show them why humans were never just myths." The plan was simple in theory, but daring in practice. Adrian had studied the city's terrain and the fleet's patterns. He divided the Valari soldiers into small, agile units, assigning each a specific role. Some would create diversions, some would ambush enemy boarding parties, and others would control key points to disrupt the fleet's operations. "Remember, Adrian instructed, his voice calm and commanding. We fight smarter, not harder. Every move counts. Every action must be precise yet flexible. Humans adapted, improvised, and overcame impossible odds. So will we. Lyra watched as the soldiers nodded, their confidence bolstered by days of training under Adrian's guidance. For the first time, she felt that they were not just a fleet. They were a team, thinking, moving, and acting as one. Vera, the AI, displayed enemy movements on the holographic screen. Commander, fleet trajectory indicates direct assault. Multiple boarding units preparing descent. Probability of overwhelming standard defenses 92%. Adrian smiled faintly. Then we change the odds. That is what humans do. We adapt. We fight with heart, mind, and willpower. We make the impossible possible. As the enemy ships descended, the city erupted into action. Energy emitters sparked to life, creating illusions of larger forces. Drones maneuvered through broken streets, creating confusion among the attackers. The Valari soldiers executed Adrian's plans with precision, moving through alleys, scaling towers, and setting traps. Remember the human principle, Adrian shouted. Adapt, improvise, overcome. Every obstacle is an opportunity. The first wave of enemy boarding parties landed. They expected chaos, but instead found organized resistance, ambushes, and traps at every turn. Lyra observed as the Valari soldiers, guided by Adrian, used both intellect and instinct to gain advantage. Even with their superior numbers, the attackers faltered. Every move Adrian had anticipated, every distraction he had prepared shifted the balance in favor of the defenders. Kalar, standing beside Lyra, whispered, Commander, it's incredible. The soldiers aren't just following orders, they're thinking, anticipating, adapting. Lyra nodded. Yes, and it's all because of Adrian. Humans don't just fight, they inspire. Hours passed. The battle raged across the ruined city. Plasma beams lit the sky while soldiers moved with precision and courage. Adrian himself took part, striking decisively where needed, guiding, correcting, and inspiring. Every action he took reminded Lyra why the myths had spoken of human warriors. They fight not because they are stronger, she realized, but because they believe, because they adapt, and because they never give up. Vera's sensors tracked the fleet's diminishing numbers. Commander, she reported, enemy effectiveness has decreased by 65%. Retreat probable, Adrian's voice carried across the battlefield. Hold your ground. Push them back. Show them the strength of unity, courage, and will. The enemy ships began to retreat. Their formations broke under the coordinated counterattack. The defenders of Sol 3, inspired by one human warrior, had turned the tide against overwhelming odds. As the last enemy vessels fled, silence settled over the city. Fires burned in scattered areas, but the soldiers were alive, triumphant, and transformed. Lyra stood with Adrian on a high tower looking at the horizon. You've done it, she said softly. Against impossible odds, you've shown them that humans, and those inspired by humans, cannot be defeated so easily. Adrian shook his head, a faint smile on his lips. It wasn't just me. It was all of you. You adapted, you fought, and you believed. That is what humans do. We don't rely on power alone. We rely on courage, creativity, and unity. That is why myths were written about us. That is why the galaxy remembers. Lyra looked at him, realization dawning. The myths weren't exaggerations. They were warnings. They were lessons. They were proof that humans, human spirit, can overcome the impossible. Adrian nodded. Exactly. And now you have seen it firsthand. In the aftermath, the Valari soldiers gathered around the fires that dotted the ruined city. They listened as Adrian spoke of humanity, its history, its values, its resilience. He told them of battles fought not for conquest but for freedom, of lives lived and lost for others, of courage and determination that refused to die even when all seemed lost. These are the lessons humans left behind, he said. Not machines, not technology. Courage, heart, and willpower are the true weapons. Never forget that. Lyra felt the weight of his words. For years, she had relied on logic, order, and precision. But she now understood that something more powerful existed, a spark of life, of courage that could change the outcome of any battle. Days later, as the fleet in orbit retreated beyond Sensor's reach, Adrian and Lyra stood on a hill overlooking the city. The sun was rising again, signaling a new beginning. You've changed them, Lyra said quietly. The soldiers, the fleet? Everyone who followed you, they've been transformed. Adrian looked at the ruins of his long-lost home, a faint smile touching his lips. Humans endure, Commander, and humans inspire. We fight, we survive, and we pass our courage to others. That is why myths exist, not to deceive but to teach, to remind the galaxy what it means to be brave, to act, and to hope. Lyra nodded. And now the galaxy will see what humans can do. Yes, Adrian said. It will see because we are no longer gone. The human warriors have returned, and the galaxy will remember. In the days that followed, Lyra and Adrian worked to rebuild the city's defenses, train the Volari further, and prepare for any threat that might come from the stars. But the most important change was not in weapons or walls. It was in hearts and minds. The Volari, once bound by strict logic, had learned to think like humans. They adapted, improvised, and acted with courage. They no longer feared uncertainty, for they had seen that determination, ingenuity, and unity could overcome any challenge. And at the center of it all stood Adrian Cross, the last human warrior. A man who had slept for centuries, yet whose spirit remained unbroken. A legend made real. At night, Lyra stood alone, looking at the stars above. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers, mysteries, and wonders, but she felt hope. Humanity, thought lost, had returned, not just in myth, but in spirit, courage, and action. Adrian joined her silently. They stood together, watching the skies. Do you think the myths will continue? Lyra asked. Adrian smiled faintly. They will, because humans endure. Because when the galaxy needs courage, it will find it in those who refuse to give up. And when myths become reality, hope becomes unstoppable. Lyra felt a sense of peace. The story of humanity was no longer a tale whispered in archives. It was alive, growing, and ready to face the stars. The myths had spoken of human warriors, and now one had returned and the galaxy would never forget.